welcome everybody. First of all, Paul, we were sorry to hear about your loss, and we wish you a lot of strength.
Oh, well, thank you, Doran.
This session within the Venice project, which is going on very well, lots of interest and wonderful encounters. This session is about the theme of fauna and flora, and we wanted to discuss a few different aspects within that topic. So I suggest, Nicola, perhaps you start and present your work.
Yes.
With us in this session right now is Topaz. Ori will present herself. Perhaps Ori, present herself now, please. Okay?
Sure. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Topaz. I'm a designer, a researcher, and a lecturer from Shankar College, and I'm the head of creative research at the CIRTEX, which is the Center for Innovation and Research in Textiles. And I'm here to talk today about the fish skin project.
Okay. Paul, can you introduce yourself shortly?
Yes, I'm Paul Malone. I'm an artist based at the APT studios in Deptford. And I kind of deal with art science inspirations, I suppose you'd call them, and mainly to do with astrophysics. So what I'm going to be presenting today is a little bit out of my topic, but I hope it's of interest.
Okay. So Nicola, let's move to you, and perhaps you could start by again introducing yourself and then carry on.
Okay, I'm an artist also based at APT. Since 1995, we both came at that point. And also my work is very much involved with between art and science, and have done a few commissions and collaborations curatorially and as an artist. So I'll be looking at some of those in my work now. Also, I work at University of the Arts London, at Chelsea College of Art, and also Camberwell, mostly with the MA curating and collection students, and also design students at Camberwell. I actually support them to help them write their dissertations, and but we often employ them in our exhibitions at APT when we curate exhibitions, and so this is it's very good to have to be able to offer young students some work, sometimes paid, sometimes it isn't paid, depending on funding.
And you are a member of Balcony.
And Balcony, of course. Yes, I am. Yes. Yeah, we did a great balcony project at APT during COVID on the windows of the gallery. So no one could walk into the gallery, but we interacted with the street in such an interesting way. And I think it was one of those ones where we really felt we got to know Deptford much better, because everyone stopped and talked to us and interacted with the exhibition much more than actually came into the gallery.
During the COVID.
Yes, that was. Yes, it was. Would you like me to present now?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'm going to share screen. I'm going to show you two projects. One of which is really a finished project. It was in the past. It was part of an exhibition that Paul and I curated together during COVID, the early, lockdowns. We had one lockdown, then one, I think 2 weeks off, and then another lockdown, and chlorophylla took place in that gap in December. And I'm also going to show you a work that is halfway through, and to see my research process. And I mean, I would have expected it to be finished, but actually events that I was expecting to happen have been delayed, and so it's a partial project. So I'm going to now share screen. So this was a project that I worked with very much X-ray solar flares. I'm actually going to read this, and I hope you don't mind, but sometimes I jump around in how I say things, and it might be easier to understand if I actually read it. So it was called chlorophylla frequencies. The substantiation of sunlight into responsive frondescence through photosynthesis is explored in this installation made for chlorophylla. Recent video footage of the green filtered X-ray solar flare region of the sun at 6 million Kelvin is projected onto a reclaimed aluminium porthole. This near-live footage was recorded by the Solar Dynamics Observatory's Atmospheric Imaging Assembly during a coincidentally active time for solar flares that included an M4.4 solar eruption on 30th of November 2020. SDO aims to understand solar variability and its impacts on Earth. Pickups have been attached to the stems of buddleia plants, and when interacted with, the branches sound, referencing John Cage's Child of Tree. These plants become interactive instruments that are improvised on sonically through the careful plucking of their branches by participants. The visualizations of these amplified plant frequencies are projected onto a second porthole. Plants respond to human contact, sound waves, and magnetic fields. So scroll down and you can see that the projector is projecting through it's actually a back projection film, which is then throwing an image forward through the plants onto the wall. So that would have been moving. And here is one of our visitors interacting with the plants. I'm just going to show you briefly a film of this actually moving. So you can see on the wall very slowly that the sun is turning, and live frequencies of the sound of the sun can be seen on the middle panel, which is also throwing green across the floor. You can, strange sort of more percussive sounds you can hear. It's outside the gallery. This is in the evening, and yeah. Okay, so this is me a few years ago. Now, right, so I'm plucking the buddleia stems, and these are massively amplified through pickups. Incredibly strong pickups. Just one pickup each plant. And you can see the frequencies reacting to that in the middle, becoming brighter on sound.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to stop this now. And one thing that Paul and I did for this exhibition, which I think was one of the statements, our curatorial statements, that I think was our strongest. And for this reason, I'd just like to read it out a little bit. I think we were totally aligned at that time in how we wanted to do this exhibition. Okay, so it was like a manifesto, I would say. Every day we inhabit the vegetational world. It forms a living interface essential to our existence as biological organisms. In its physical form, it represents a substantiation of sunlight through photosynthesis into frondescence, verdure, and greenery. Locked within the chemical matrix of every plant are the molecules that give us the perception of green. The chemical formula for this is C55H72, I'm not going to say the whole thing, or chlorophyll, and it engages in complex reactions to convert the sun's energy into living organisms. And in the end, we say we are proposing a new revolution in our understanding of chlorophylla. Anyway, I recommend this one because I think it also relates to our topic here. I'm now going to go to PowerPoint. So I'm going to go into share PowerPoint. And this is the project that I'm currently working on. And it's very much working with the bark of trees, responding to Doran's call out beyond the skin. I was very interested in this idea of listening to trees. And so I used a very powerful geophone attached to trees. And these early ones, I'm attaching it to actually quite large bits of trunk. But through doing this a lot, I found that it's actually much more powerful to attach the geophones to slightly smaller branches, and you could hear really, really clearly then. So, we'll go on to the next one. So I would say what I was very interested in is that unfortunately the building that you can see in the middle photograph, lower middle photograph, you can see a building, and this is housing a community of artists called the Art Hub. And it's about to be pulled down to make way for a very large new development. Now, to be fair, the developers do want to try and save the cherry trees, and I'm sure they do because they will have a big garden on the top of their tall building where I think they would like to look out on the cherry trees. But I do have concerns really that the cherry trees are going to suffer with this huge, huge building next door and piling down very near. But anyway, I'm not predicting that they will suffer, but I would like to observe them and actually record their reactions to this development through. So I'm doing a lot of recordings now, and then I will do them as the development's happening, and then afterwards. But they're going to be compared, these wild cherry trees, to the same trees in Oxley's Wood, which is very old, nearly 8,000-year-old wood. And the cherry trees there are quite extraordinary. They are said to only live for 60 years, but we've been measuring them and working out their age. And there is one there that we think is double that age, 115 years old. So yes, they can last a very long time. So I'm going to move to the next. It should just go to the next. There we are. Okay, so this, I just wanted to give you a sense of these cherry trees. This is still at Crossfields in movement. These trees grow in a very different way to the Oxley's Wood. Oxley's has many, many trees around, and so they tend to go very, very straight up and just have their leaves at the top. Whereas these trees have got room, they've spread, and they have extremely good crowns. We did record or use Merlin, which is a very good bird app, and we found one bird in this one in Deptford, although I'm sure if I went early in the morning we would find more. But yes, in Oxley's there are much more, many more. Okay, I'm going to move now to the next. Here we are in Oxley's Wood. And this is recently, one on the left is in the spring. On the right, Paul photographing me a few days ago in Oxley's Wood after it, well, we're going through very, very heavy rain. It's about to get much stronger. And it's quite extraordinary because the trees had been very parched, but you can hear them drinking the water. You actually do hear the xylem, the little air bubbles, really percussively clicking as they draw up the water. these wild cherry trees are actually called Prunus avium or Gean. That's their Celtic name in Scotland, in Ireland is Gean, and they are native to our woodlands. Avium means bird in Latin, and it also refers to wild places. And as I said before, they're only expected to last 60 years, but Oxleys, there's one that's 115. They can grow up to 30 meters tall and are highly tolerant of pollution. So every 25-year-old tree can absorb 20 pounds of emissions. And so they are very valuable, not only for us, but for wildlife. So, I don't know why that's doing that. Okay, click the wrong place. Okay, this is the 115-year-old tree. And we did this by measuring around the tree, and then we divided it by 2, which is for it being on the edge of a woodland, but still among trees. And that gives its age at, it was about 230 centimeters. And that divided by 2 came to 150 years old. Just give you an idea of the birds here. You can always tell the cherries, they have a very, very particular bark with these wonderful horizontal bands and a kind of purpley grey trunk, so immediately recognizable. There was a campaign in the 1990s to save Oxley's Wood, as there was this plan for this East London river crossing. If you look at the map on the right, you can see this huge 6-lane motorway would have gone through the eastern section and really taken down so many of actually that particular area on the east. It has the oldest trees and it really would have been a huge difference. So many people actually put their own houses on the line and to put up money to save the wood. And this went on for about, I would say 6 or 7 years. And it was called, the scheme to have this new, 6-lane South Circular, was called the Roads to Prosperity scheme, very much a Conservative government scheme. So a huge outcry against it. Many of the campaigners started this Adopt a Tree scheme to get every tree in the forest adopted. And they intended to call on each adopter to defend their tree from bulldozers, rather like the influential Chitko tree huggers of the Garhwal Himalayas during the 1970s and 80s. I don't know if any of you know this group of wonderful older ladies. They were recorded 10 years later by a photographer hugging each tree, and they actually did prevent these wonderful trees being taken down, as they were part of their livelihood. This is one of the cherry trees that's leaning over at a wild angle. That's one of the parrots. We have a wonderful colonies of parakeets that have taken over many London woodlands. I just wondered if anyone had any questions before I talk too much.
Well, Nicola, perhaps since we are in a Beyond the Skin project, could you elaborate a bit about your view of how you interlace that project with skin issues?
Well, I think it's the bark. So the bark is, I'm finding that the bark responds differently in different trees and in different sized branches. And the bark is the skin of the tree. And it actually does pick up exactly how the tree is responding to water suddenly coming, or drought, or sap in the spring. And also responds extraordinarily to wind. So I've had them on big trees, and you can hear the whole huge tree creaking. So I think it's, I mean, with this whole project, it will be also how these trees, whether there's any difference when the development goes on, when all the drilling will be happening, huge amounts of lorry, a lot more pollution. There will be many things that can be tested for the abiotic stresses that the tree will go through. So in the final artwork, which will exist in a gallery exhibition, maybe in a balcony exhibition, that will actually show how the trees are reacting. So I would call this really a process. This is not a finished artwork. It is part of a process.
I'm more referring to your expectations or thoughts. Do you see any parallel between the skin's bark to human or animal skins? Should we attach similar sensors to our pets or to our neighbors or family members?
Yes, I think so. I mean, it's interesting you should say that, because I did get a sensor for myself to pick up pollution, because I thought it would be quite interesting to respond. I was actually going to either put it in a tree or on myself or both, because we know that the pollution, once this building work starts, rockets up. There's been a very, very interesting survey done by someone at Goldsmiths, who actually looked at the pollution levels going up. Actually, one of the sensors was right outside my studio, and they did rocket up when the buildings next door to us were happening. We had Paul will know, we have this huge queue of lorries, cement lorries, all waiting to come in, always beside APT. And one of our artists is out there trying to persuade them to turn their engines off. Victoria, wonderful. Yes, so I'm not sure they were quite wanting to, but some of them did, I think. But yes.
So I think Nicola, none of the PowerPoints really had the equipment that you're using. Photographs of that, because that's what might be a bit confusing, that you were using quite sophisticated.
I'm just going to go get it now.
Sound, it's like a contact mic, where it's a probe. You can go into the tree and do the what should we say, the flow of she did describe it originally, but the flow of the sap rising through the tree.
So this is the Malone geophone, made in East Europe, and it's incredibly sensitive. Oh, I'm on mute. Why am I on mute?
Oh, no, you are loud and clear.
And so this spike is meant to be put into the earth or wherever. But I found that by far the best thing was to strap this bit hard against the branch. In fact, there was a slide. The next slide I was just about to do, showing the strap to the tree. But that picks it up very well. I think we tried initially to put the point into holes in the bark, and I was picking up a lot more ground movement and different things on that, but really that sound of xylem and movement going up through the bark, that picked up much better here.
Does it also work in small trees, like trees that you put in a pot and try to?
Yes, I mean, I'm so interested in Lila Hadani's work with plant stress, and she's working at the University of Tel Aviv, and I think she's working with much smaller plants, and obviously, nothing like this size. I know, really fascinating. I would have loved some communication with her. I think we were both very busy, and somehow I had a huge flood in my studio, which has completely taken over this summer. But yes, I mean, it's one of those things where I think that research is fascinating, picking up stress in plants. And with her, it was drought, I think specifically drought. But then I knew that, and she did actually, I read in her papers that she said plants were noisiest when they were drought stricken. And so we did get quite a long period of no rain, and then suddenly a huge amount of rain. And that's, I think, why it was quite so noisy about 3 days ago.
Okay. Do you think that it would be worthwhile to take perhaps such portable and small trees, say, to the underground and see how they respond to that strange environment.
Oh, I like that, Yuda. This idea of taking the plants with you is a wonderful idea. Yes, how they respond. I would need to get really good, sensitive, small, much smaller, probably not geophones. I mean, something else, sensors. I mean, there is something called plant wave, and there's an equivalent of piezos, yes, which could be used. But yeah, that would be interesting because the pollution in the underground is quite appalling. Yes, I think, and the particulate matter is bad.
Of course, we are talking just about a sort of scientific artistic experiment. We are not aiming to provoke riots on the underground.
I know, because he's wilting plants. Yes. Well, I mean, riots and resistance is normal for London. I think it's healthy, and you know, campaigns happen, and we were rather delighted about the resistance in Tel Aviv. I have to say, we thought wonderful, but we hoped you could get your plane flights as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we learned a bit about the cover or the bark or the skin sensation and their wider implications. Actually, one of our recorded sessions or presentations would be about itching, which perhaps is parallel to what those trees, those poor and not poor trees feel.
Yes.
When they are thirsty, perhaps they feel the itch or something else. We don't know.
Interesting, isn't it? Yes, I'm sure they do. And I mean, it was quite interesting, these arboreal reports of how they were going to any tree root that was under 2.5 centimeters, they could cut through. But anything bigger than that, it's like a sort of planning permission, you know, sort of, and then anything bigger than that, they would try and protect with Hessian and, you know, various things which when they're piling through with their concrete pilers, I'm sure just, you know, I'm a little bit skeptical, to be honest, but I have to say one will hope for positivity on this, but I'm certainly going to observe what happens and just record.
Yeah, that's.
I really like your idea of human response to all of this as well. Yeah, pollution.
Well, I hope you won't need to reach that phase of tree hugging that went on in India. I mean,
Yes.
it's very nice. It's very nice movement, but they were very distressed, and they were trying and succeeded to save those trees, right? Or those woods.
And I would love to. I mean, we actually went to the planning application or for this development, and someone spoke really eloquently from APT, an artist, and Paul helped him develop the arguments, and they were not even going to give compensation to us, who were absolutely opposite, and we get our light, you know, completely altered in the gallery, and you know, I think they just want to build their building, and the council need their money kickback, and so it's happening. So yeah, we were gobsmacked, to be honest, but there we are. That is.
So once again, we saw a different kind of suffer by stimulating one's skin, and that particular ones are not necessarily human. Ori, perhaps we'll switch now to you, and then we'll go to Paul again. Ori, would
Sure.
you like?
So should I go now?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, so I already presented myself. I'm Ori, I'm from Shankar. I am a researcher at Sirtex, and like I said before, I'm here to talk about the Freeskin project. The Freeskin project ended a few months ago. It ended in March 2024. It was a 5-year project, which I was lucky to work on. It was an international collaboration, which, by the way, UAL was also part of. Nicola, you mentioned you're working there. And it's a collaboration. It's an academic and industry collaboration. So basically, researcher travel from, if you're from the academy, you travel to the industry, and vice versa, to develop the topic of developing fish skin as a new sustainable raw material for the fashion industry. Now, this is, of course, this is an interdisciplinary project. Researchers came from very different backgrounds. There were designers, there were scientists, there were artists. So it was a really interesting crowd. And it's based on the concept of blue economy, meaning that we already know that fish for food today is growing exponentially, and the consumption is growing, and it will continue to grow. And basically, we are looking at the skin as a waste material of the fish for food industry, realizing it can be used, and it can be very interesting to work on in fashion, but also in other disciplines as well. It's important to know that we only deal with fish that are farm grown and are not being fished from the ocean. So besides my academic background, I have a bachelor degree from Hunter College and a master degree from Shankar College. I also have a non-academic background, which is called in French La Maroquinerie, which I was lucky enough to study from this master in the field. But I am trained in the craft of leather goods, so I know how to make things from leather. And this was a huge part in my work in this project. So in the preliminary talk Yehuda and I had, we decided that I will show part of the more industrial prospect of the project, what I did in the project, and something that is more like artistic. So I'm going to start with the more industrial part. This is from you see my slides passing, right? It's not, yeah, okay. So this is from another partner in the project, Nordic Fish Leather. It's a tannery that is based in Blondus in Iceland. I was there September 2019. I knew already a lot about the tanning process. In general, you can say that there are two types of tanning. There is chrome tanning and there's vegetable tanning, which is, by the way, is coming from bark of trees, Nicola. So I'll address that a little bit later on. But so here in this family-owned factory, they are tanning the fish skin. It's also, again, it's part of their culture. And I was visiting the factory, and I guess you can see that there are different collections used in fish skin, but they're usually like capsule collection. It's nothing major, and in an EU project, you are measured for the impact. You are measured for doing something that is meaningful. So it's like the opposite side of doing something that is very artistic. And here I was trying to really understand how you can take these skins and make it something that, the big company or large fashion companies can be used in their regular production line. Instead of using other materials that are not sourced from waste. The skin that is being used the most is the salmon skins. It's the largest size from the fish for food waste material leftover. So there were different challenges here, like first of all, the skin size, which is still much smaller than any other sheet of material that you would cut a pattern from. It has a changing thickness. It has a very distinct texture that you can use as a decorative element, but you need to understand how to use it wisely when you're working on larger parcels. And it's very sensitive to heat, so printing on it can be a bit challenging, because for the curing of the printing, there was some development that needed to work there. So like I said, like in the fashion industry, usually there is a sheet of material. It doesn't matter if it's a fabric or a skin, but it's usually larger than the pattern of the item. And here we were dealing with something that is different. So we needed to do like something that is called like reverse nesting, to use the material to connect the different parts in order to bring the pattern together, which was quite challenging in the beginning to understand how you can do that without creating too many failure points. Usually these connecting lines are the failure point of each item. Today in the industry, this is how it's done. You can see it on the left. Basically, you take the different panels and you sew them together, and then you cut the piece, the pattern from it. It's not appealing. I mean, we can debate that, but it's not. It looks very industrial, very tough. It's just not the right way to go. Like I said, this is a very interdisciplinary project. So in the group of the researcher that I was working with, we had a few people that were more in the anthropology, and they were looking at the cultural heritage that the fish skin brings. This is something that was used like 5,000, 6,000 years ago by different Nordic people. And as you can see from the element on the right, the way that they were using it, first of all, this is a vegetable tan, so it's natural. It's all naturally tanned, and you can see the beautiful gradients from so they would preserve the natural look of the skin from dark to light, and they would use it artistically to create such garments that were used back then. And me working with a company or with a factory that is working with chrome tanning, and obviously the skins after the tanning does not preserve this natural look. I was looking for ways to bring it back to the visual look of the skins. And what I did is that I created these geometric patterns that were sitting on the connecting points. So I was taking basically the failure point and covering them with the prints so that I can create this longer or larger sheets of material to work with. The challenges here were that I was working on that I was printing basically on surfaces that were uneven in size, and I was working, maybe I should have said this before, but the company that I was working here is Corny Digital, and I was working with a chemistry engineer here in collaboration, and she was very much in tune to the ideas that I had. She was trying to come up with the different practical solutions, could be application solution, could be chemistry solution. So for example, here I was stitching the skin for I was printing on. So we used consumables from polyester, which matches the thread. So the collaboration here was very, very interesting because we had to think, okay, I would come with a design idea, but now to execute it or to bring it to life, we needed some technological or some chemistry adjustments. So and it also made me like kind of like reverse the order of how you work on that. So instead of taking the skins and connecting them, printing on them, and cut the pattern from them, I reversed the order. I made the pattern first, I sewn it, I made like the full panels, and then I was printing on it. So it was much more beneficial. I was able to conceal completely the failure point. And basically what I learned to realize is that by taking the classic line of production and kind of like shifting around the order of the way that things are made, I can bring these like smaller pieces or the like smaller waste materials and make it very beneficial to work with it. So the adjustment was also in the process of how you examine an idea that you have, and you just shift the order in order to make it work. So some of the more like design strategies, like working between playing between the textures and the print, or using the print size to resemble the exotic skin. I was being playful with the prints that I was using on the connecting points. Also, I learned very early on that the realist images do not work very well on texturized surfaces. So I was working with hand motifs, and I just found like this, the Procreate. It's an app on the iPad that you can really easily, use your hand-drawn motifs and then generate a digital image. So that was working very well. And also thinking about, leather is something that age very well, and it's usually something that you wear for a really long time. So I was also playing with a stone wash effect that would preserve this aging quality for a long time. We send that, I don't have a slide on it, but we send all of these samples and all of these design strategies to like this standardized lab that gives you like the stamp. Okay, this is good for the industry for this and this type of materials, and we passed all the tests. Another thing that I did was just printing on the skin separately. This is more designed for someone who does not have a full access to the printing machine and would have to break the production line in some point, go print, and then come back to the studio. So I was creating these like sort of like a bank of opportunities that you can print and then go back and you can create this customized look for each pattern. I'll show you now the two final bags that were kind of like this proof of concept. This would be the first one, and it's built on this the trapezoid, the regular trapezoid shape of the salmon skin. So these are 6 trapezoids connected together, and it's kind of like the classic bucket bag, only you don't see any of the connecting lines. So there's like this unified look. And then the second one, like I said, it's a bank of opportunities. So each tote bag would look completely different. And this is actually, I don't want to say easy, but it's something that could be made on a massive scale. So this is actually a closing of a cycle for me, because I presented the beginning of this work in Venice in March 2023. The University of Venice had a conference called the 4 Elements of Fashion, and I presented the beginning of this work here. So now I'm closing this chapter with you guys. There's supposed to be a publication coming out soon. And there I discussed, like I said, the interdisciplinarity, the design approach, and the engineering method that followed it, the way that we worked in collaboration, and also evaluating the production process in a way that could be beneficial for that. Because the way I look at this is like a case study working with fish skin, but there is so much search these days for others, like waste materials, smaller materials, things that coming like in smaller chunks that people or designers are trying to figure how to bring them back into production. So I think this could be a really good example of how this can be done. So a little bit more on fish skins, this time's about carp skins. This is another work that was presented at the Tel Aviv Biennale of Crafted Design, again in 2003, so that's last year. It's called Begedim Kisim, which in Hebrew it's a reference, a folklore song that discusses the opportunity to wear a new clothing with pockets for Passover. And I created this huge pocket from the carp skins that I was sourcing out from a different holiday, Rosh Hashanah, which is the major holiday in Israel where you eat gefilte fish. So like I said, in Iceland, or in general, you can say with tanning skins, there are two ways to approach it. There is the chromium tanned skins, and also the vegetable tanning, which comes from bark. These two images from a workshop that I did also in Iceland by this really great lady, Lotta Ram. She's Swedish. You can find her online, and she taught us like the very basics of how to tan skins, which is, if you don't mind the smell, it's a fascinating craft. For me, it was, at least. You can actually tan skins from all the things that we have in the kitchen, like oil and soap and eggs, egg yolk. And we learn different methodologies, also working with the barks of trees. Bark usually takes like a few weeks. Here is a few images from the workshop. You can see me here softening the skins on the jaw of a deer. This is something she brought with her. Here in Israel, I use like a chair or like something that is like a wooden piece to soften the skin. But this was very interesting because it just shows you like the very basic and the natural way that you can actually work with this material. Going back to my personal research, I was very much interested with the Israeli fish. Like, I wanted to know which fish is that, how would it look, what are the natural materials that are available here locally that I can use. So I did all this preliminary research, and then the open call from the Biennale came, and it asked, what is the, how do you call it? What is the impact man has on the world? And it discusses the Anthropocene area and the way that we are basically ruining the planet. And for me, this was an opportunity to discuss the way that we can work waste on a local basis. And like I said, I combined the gefilte fish, which is the Israeli, or not the Israeli, the Jewish dish that is actually, it was very interesting because this is the only fish that when you go to the store and you buy it, you buy it chopped already. You don't need the skin. The skin is here in Israel. It's very relevant to see it because it said something about the kosher of the fish. So the crowd here is not used to buy the fish without the skin. And this was a great opportunity because the fish store, which I was already in very close contact with, they just preserved, they just saved for me all of the carp skins from Rosh Hashanah. By the way, you cannot get this fish just like year round. It's only before Rosh Hashanah and Passover that you can buy the fish. So I took like 4 kilograms of carp skins and I put it in the freeze. And for several, like 3 or 4 months, I tanned them all. And I have a short, it's not a video, but it's a short presentation to show. So let me just move to a different share. Yeah. This is the fish store. The fresh carps. This is all the skins. Oh, this is important. I forgot to say, I also used sumac, which is, again, it's a local plant that was used here, thousands of years ago for the tanning of skin. So instead of the materials that I brought back from Iceland, I found a local tree that would tan the skins properly. This is me cooking the leaves of the sumac to create this acidic concentrated liquid to tan the skin. This was all done like for several weeks in my kitchen. Then you have to weight it so you understand to realize how much powder you need to add. It's a long process. But it's fascinating. To me, at least, it was really fascinating. I put those in jars and you measure the temperature to make sure the fish skin, it doesn't like heat. So it has to remain below 20 degrees Celsius, and you have to shake it every few hours. This is, again, softening the skin on the on a wooden chair. And this is before and after. And then you will see me again now. This is drying, just like playing stretched and dried. And this is the pattern which I started to work on, preparing the artifact for the Biennale, coloring the panels. It's also nice to see that, the fish, they come in two pairs. There's always left and a right, so you can create a symmetry. You can think about it as a whole.
You actually use a no regular sewing machine.
Yes, yes.
Ulrich, you mentioned the smell. Is it a smelly process? We know that skin of animals like cows or deers, it used to be a smelly process in the old days.
Yeah.
And now we are dealing with fish.
Yeah, it's very smelly. I never tanned a fish of a skin of a mammal, so I cannot say anything about that. I can say that with the skins of fish, some people couldn't take it, so they didn't do the workshop. I really didn't mind that. And what's important to note is that if you get the oil from the skin out, and then you're able to replenish it, which is what you do in a proper tanning process, there is no smell. Like the smell is gone, and then you get like a really beautiful smell of leather, the same smell that we get from any other leather good that we buy. So if you know what you're doing, you will be able to get rid of the smell. I can say that, doing it domestically, I couldn't get rid of the smell completely, but it's not stinky. It's actually really nice to smell. But if you look at the industrially tanned skins, and also the vegetable tanning can also be done, is also done industrially. It has a beautiful smell of really good, genuine leather. So it's just a matter of being like really professional about it.
So that's
and of course, don't minding the beginning of the process, which is smelly, of course.
But suppose after you have a nicely smelling product, which then it comes into contact with smelly material, like spilled coffee cup or any other smelly trash. What happens? Does that skin has the same absorbing qualities like cloth? Are the different?
No, it has the same absorbing quality of genuine leather. It becomes leather. Like like if you look at the bottom side, you wouldn't know if it's a leather of a deer or if it's a leather of a fish. So I mean, and today there are different, different processes, like chemical processes, that you can take the leather, and so you make it hydrophobic, or like you can play with with these qualities or with these characteristics. But of course, I didn't do it. But it's what you basically get, like your final product is leather. Okay, it was skin, now it's leather, and it's genuine leather. It comes from fish, but it acts and it looks and it smells the same. So there's go ahead.
Sorry. You mentioned salmon and carps. Do you have any experience, or anyone else has experience with other sea creatures? And specifically, I'm referring to the octopus skin, which is a wonder by itself. Has anyone tried to process octopus skin?
I'm sure someone has, not in this project. We were actually being very careful about fishing or about, hunting. This was not in the, in the agenda of the project. We were looking at, fish for food or aquamarine like growth in order to basically recycle the waste materials and not we didn't want to generate any impact on people, trying to hunt more fish or taking more things from the ocean.
Understood.
So
Understood.
it's supposed to be like a byproduct of a different industry that we are using, in order to make an impact in a good way. Okay, but any skin of an animal can be tanned. And can be used. I'm sure if we look in the in the literature, someone has tanned octopus skin, but I'm not aware of that.
Okay, from the octopus back to Paul. Yes, Paul.
Yeah, no, I thought it was fascinating actually. But I was wondering about the role of the actual scales in the product that you're making. You're talking about skin as such, but is that the substrate that you're tanning? And the scales really just lie on it in a kind of decorative way or textural way rather, or do they have a role as well in the product?
The scale, this is interesting because I brought back many scales because I wanted to do something with it, like embellishments or something like that. But basically, you remove it. So in the process that you saw me, working with this dull knife, you work against the scales and you remove it. And then you get the honeycomb structure that that hold the scale in place. But the scales as another waste material is fascinating, and I'm sure there's a whole lot that can be done with it. I actually saw some things around the world, but it's nothing was fully executed. So if you're interested, yeah, you should do that. Definitely.
Yeah, I was thinking of in the original film, the Blade Runner film.
The what?
Blade Runner, the Ridley Scott from the 1980s. Sorry.
Okay.
And it's they're making artificial life there, and he's obviously a detective trying to investigate things, and he goes into a shop where they make snake skins because he's found a snake skin scale on the crime scene, and so he goes and finds a guy, and he says, "Oh yes, I remember I made this scale in such and such. Whether there's potential for 3D nano printing of things like that, which is what they were doing in that film." So that's what sparked my question in the first place.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know the film, but I think that the scales are, they're fascinating. And when you were coloring the skins, there always some scales remains in the in the bucket, so they preserve the color very well. And I think that there is a huge potential there.
Okay, Paul, shall we hear about?
Okay. Now, given the problems that Nicola had with her sound, this might not come out. We might have to sort of skip forward. But do tell me if you can't hear the sound on the movie that I'm going to play.
We will.
But sorry, I've gone and lost my mouse. There we are. Yes, I was originally approached by a facility called Creative Reactions, and they bring scientists and artists together. And they placed me with a fish zoologist from the University of Brasilia called Eduardo Bassa. And he really gave just a 15-minute PowerPoint presentation of his work and the coral reefs off the Amazon, off Brazil. And it was fascinating, really, but it was only 15 minutes, so I didn't get quite a lot of things. And so it was my response to doing that. And I was kind of scratching my head a little bit, of what I should do with this presentation. Now, what he was saying is that he'd identified 3 fish camouflage types. One was fish that live on the bottom, and they adopted the camouflage of the rocks and the corals and what have you around there to disguise themselves from predators. The fish in the water column in between adopted dazzle camouflage to break up their profile, and so the fish were confused, the predators were confused not to come off them. And then there are other ones that inhabited the top layer of the water, and they had a silver camouflage as well, so that they kind of would reflect the sky, and confuse predators as well, like that, that they were kind of silvery and reflective. So I thought I could work with those 3 kinds of camouflage. I mean, in terms of this project, how far that's to do with the skin or whatever, it's certainly beyond the skin because it alludes to the way that these fish have evolved over, millennia or whatever, for it to adopt these different strategies. But in terms of generating an artistic project out of it, it kind of got me thinking. And then I was just literally stood outside my studio and I thought, right, well, there's an equivalence there. To come back to Nicola's presentation, it was about the trees that are growing naturally in this ancient forest and the trees that are there in an urban setting. And I thought perhaps I could do the similar sort of thing, but cross over between the coral reef off Brazil and Deptford Creek, which is a tributary of the Thames. And perhaps you don't know it, you'll see at the beginning of the film, I'm going to say, but it is a world of mud, basically. It's just very dystopian in a way, and there's industry around it, and it's canalized from, I think, from certainly the early 1800s, but it goes back before then. It's where the sailing ships that went around the world in the 16th, 17th century were built. So there's lots of sort of detritus on the ground, and it's very, you could not mistake it for Brazil, really, or the coral reefs. So I thought, well, let's just do an equivalence between these two things and see where it goes. And so I went down there and did some filming and things, and I patched it together in a movie that is in 3 sections. So again, it's like walking through the mud, and I was trying to figure out what kind of equivalence I could do in terms of the mud environment, because obviously there are a few fish down there. There's flounders and there's hermit crabs and various things, but you don't really see them very often. So really, the Wellington boots that I was making seemed a very good substitute for that. And then I did the dazzlefish, which was set at night, where I was just using the film editing process, some of the filters on that, to generate a kind of fluid motion of the shapes that I was seeing. And then the creek itself is right underneath the flight path into Heathrow Airport. And so it was obvious that the silverfish on the top were the aeroplanes flying over. So I made some movies of those going over. And that was perhaps the most difficult thing to do because you had to anticipate when they were coming around the corner onto their approach into the radar beam into Heathrow. And I had to use this software package that told me when they were coming around, and I could get the camera set up in order to record them. So I ended up with this 3-minute short, basically. That's all it is. And then I've added, I wanted to try and go back to the kind of Latin American, if you like, the things. And so I generated this music track for it using the guitar sounds on the keyboard that I've got. I play it on the keyboard rather than on the guitar. And then I thought, well, there needs to be sort of muses involved in this in a way. And so I've got voices, and I hope you can hear all this when I come to play. And they're just describing the different modes of camouflage of the different fish. And so they appear from time to time as if they were just something that, like the gods of the river or the gods of the creek or whatever, describing what's going on in the film. So maybe I could just play it. You could ask me some questions afterwards, if you like.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thousands of miles from the coral reefs off Brazil exists a marine environment which has mud as its architecture. Twice a day, the sediment flows on the tide to deposit into the inlets and crevices of this man-made topology.
See, the numerous fish, each with its unique form of camouflage.
Some hide in mud, some display dazzle, and others as an argent against the sky.
See, there are numerous fish, each with its unique form of camouflage.
Is there a sound now?
Sound is gone.
Oh.
Some hide in mud, some display dazzle, and others as an argent against the sky.
Okay, Paul, thank you. Lovely, lovely movie.
Oh, well, thanks. As I say, that's available on, if you go on my website and look under the projects tab, you'll find it.
Yes, I think you sent us, we have it in our cloud.
Right.
The actual, great.
Mhm.
I think we also have with us Yiannos from Cyprus. Yiannos, are you with us?
Yeah. I'm here. Yeah,
Hi,
sorry.
how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Thank you. I saw that you managed to be with us most of the session.
Yeah, I want to make a question to the skin designer who was
Ori Topaz.
Ori, yeah. It's two questions. One is the skin that snakes shed of any use? Has it ever been used by anybody? You know, the skin that the snakes do.
The skin of snake is
Not
used,
the original, not the one that they
but
still
the
alive.
shade, like when they, how do you call it? When they shade it, it's very, very thin. So it cannot last like that, but I've never tried to tan it like this. I haven't had the opportunity to, but it's only like the top layer of the skin that is being removed.
It's not it's the epidermis or whatever it's called.
Yes, exactly. And when you tan a skin, is usually like the epidermis and the dermis, and there is some under another layer there, so it's much thicker than that.
Yeah, I thought so. I mean, because I've never heard of anybody using it, and I thought if it was because you find it, you know, for free. And the other question is, have you ever worked? I mean, it's a different story in a way, at least ontologically, but with vegan skin that they made with cactuses and stuff like that. Have you ever heard of it or?
I heard about it and I have some samples, but this is actually, it's not leather. It's more like it's cellulose based. It's the pulp usually from, you know, these vegetables like, you know, cactus and mushrooms, and there's a whole, you know, bunch of innovative materials, but they're not protein based. They're not leather. They're cellulose based, and they are like they call leather because they create similar look. It doesn't have the same qualities of leather, but it's a complete different family. And actually, there is a lot of, like, you know, done lately in Europe for legislation and like standardization of what you can call, you know, leather-like or leather, you know, made, and, you know, all these type of, you know, definitions that are actually very important when you want to understand what the materiality is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yiannos, from your questions, it seems that you find it interesting. Perhaps you'll do some bio art works.
No, it's very unlikely.
Why not? Why not?
I think because it will take a lot of research and the acquisition of knowledge that I think I would rather invest in other kind of of knowledge. Um, no, I'm on a different. I mean, I'm working on the power of the image. I believe in the. I mean, this is my speciality in a way. Um, I would like to have these works though. I mean, because we work with a team in Cyprus and we have exhibitions and we curate shows. And we have one now. If anybody's going to be around in Larnaca in October, we'll have an opening. That's why I'm not with you all the time these days because there's a lot of work. But I would like to have some of this work. Yes, this these new technologies. We would definitely be interested. In fact, I would like to have something like that in this exhibition, but we did not have any connections when we were kind of making the whole proposal. But for the next time, yes, not my work, but include in our next shows. We work with group shows, and yes, included in the next shows. I think it's very important aspect.
The reason I was asking was not, this was not a practical question, but I was trying to assess your sense of collaboration between art and science. Because I know you are very much into the optical sciences. You use it a lot in your photography.
Yes.
Do you think that such gained knowledge on different fields, like you had today, and was just a coincidence, a few chosen topics, do you think that despite what you said, it would be worth the effort for a artist, not necessarily you, to go into a laboratory, say Ori's laboratory, and studied some of the chemical issues and the sewing issues and so forth, in order to use those scientific achievements for your own art? Does it worth the effort?
Absolutely. I think art and technology have always been going hand in hand, and now it's, I think, precisely the time that we need to develop those two as much as possible, because it's the nature of the problems that we have in this moment on the planet, that I think that it's through a collaboration between these spheres that we can reach a kind of exit to these impasses that we have. And this is why I'm very fascinated and I'm very interested in using them in our shows. But when I'm talking about myself, sometimes we don't choose our talent in a way. We don't choose what we are good at. Talent chooses us. You know what I mean? Although I have always been good at math, and I still read about physics and what is happening. And it's still, when it comes to creativity, in fact, I tried to be a little bit more open through my eyes and spontaneous, and then become analytical, but not start with it. You know what I mean? Yes. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but I don't subscribe to the view that artists work intuitively and they do things without thinking about them and allowing their inner self to develop and so on. I believe that in the same way that art and science work together, analytical thinking and intuitive thinking must work together. And I don't draw strong distinctions between things like thoughts and emotions and logic and
that was very clear. Paul, what do you think? Do you think that you, after your long experience working with scientists, would you now enter a laboratory and participate in a research project?
Oh yeah, no, I'm certainly thinking of that. We've done some since Chlorophylla, as Nicola suggested. I put on 2 more art science exhibitions, and the Chlorophylla was really only artists, but exploring science opinions, science research. But these ones I actually included scientists in them. It's like a 50-50. One was called Periastra, and the other was called Valency. And one was about astrophysics, and the other was about chemistry, which I really find quite interesting, actually. But I had to work with them directly. I'm sort of quite good at sending off cheeky emails to professors and this, that, and the other, just to sort of challenge them to come along and take part in these exhibitions. And perhaps
but that's from the art point of view. But suppose you were asked to participate in the actual scientific work. Not to use it for your own art, but actually to use you to help the scientists. Have you found yourself in such a situation?
Yeah, no, I understand what you're trying to say, and that does happen, because I tend to go for people that have got, I don't quite know how to say this, but they're not mainstream scientists as such. They've got an angle on something. They're kind of exploring a different view about it. And there's one particular Professor Jeffries at UCL that I'm in contact with at the moment, and he's exploring red light therapy. He's got a very good website there. And I don't think he quite knows, but he's getting advice from astronomers as such. Now, some of the people that I work with on Periastra have got a take on what makes the universe tick, if you like. And a lot of it's to do with infrared photons. You know, they're the substrate for electromagnetism, for instance. And I understand these concepts from working with some of these scientists, and I can relate back to people like Professor Jeffries and say, well, look, let's have a coffee and I can explain some of these things to you. And maybe it'll help you out with the problems that they've got. For instance, red light therapy only works in the morning, doesn't work the rest of the day. So why is that? And of course, it's the sun's electromagnetic field that's affecting it as it rises and then it sets. You've got to understand spins, which is what the photons do. And so, but you have to overcome a certain skepticism. Certainly when you say, I'm an artist based in Deptford or whatever, and they want to know, well, what papers have you written, or, this, that, and the other. And it tends to be the things that don't get written about that much, but are still quite interesting. And I do go back through history, some of the early theories about things from the pre-Einstein era, for instance, where they were kind of struggling and inquiring about things. And I really like that sense of discovery and addressing phenomena and trying to figure out how it all works in the end, without any preconceptions. And so I do feel that artists do have a lot to contribute within scientific inquiry as such, even if it's just the design of experiments, and I think what Ori's been doing is quite impressive, really, that she can work with those people straight away. But there is this kind of barrier found to overcome, and you can do it, in a good humoured way. It doesn't have to be controversial or adversarial. So.
Well, I think, Paul, that you summarized our session very well by we need to overcome skepticism. And both in art and science, this is what we try to do all the time. And now perhaps the joint effort may be helpful to each pole, the scientists and the artists.
Yeah, and the kind of, I don't know, classification into fields, and also that you become more and more specialized within that field. And sometimes it's very difficult to move outside this. It's happened to me as an artist. So, you do need to sort of sometimes throwing a wild card. And I always say to the people, you know, this is my role, you know, in these kind of projects that we're running, is I'm not a threat to you, because, you know, I'm not there trying to steal your ideas or your papers or whatever, but it could be something that would allow you to go off at a tangent, maybe that you thought was interesting, but you couldn't do it because of your position within an institution, or, you know, within a body of inquiry, sorts, you know. And I mean, you do find it. I'm currently researching. It's kind of an interesting field, really. Is the anime, the cartoons that were in Japan, and some of them, they use things called cyberpunk. And by the way, Blade Runner is an example of that, the film Blade Runner. But there are other ones called dieselpunk and steampunk, and there are various films that have explored those ideas. But the concept is that steam power was frozen. That became the only way to generate power in machines and things. And then they translate that into a contemporary context. So what would it be if everything was steam powered in 2024? You know, what would it be? And it's kind of like an interesting conceit, if you like, to push that forward. And maybe that's what we're finding at the moment, you know, with different kind of concepts of things, you know, that we're looking in the wrong direction. You know, that's, I suppose, something that artists can help.
Great. I think, Paul, with those statements, I think we'll end this session. And thank you very much to you all for your contributions. It was fascinating. Thank you very much, and good evening.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, dear. Hi, Yiannos. Hi, Nicola. Hi, Paul.
Bye.
Hi, Gunther. We appreciate your participation. Thank you all for coming. Great. It was very interesting. See you soon. Bye-bye.